You're listening to the Longer Haul Youth Ministry Podcast with Jody Livingston, episode number 2. Yeah, we're doing this again.
Welcome to the Longer Haul Youth Ministry Podcast, helping you survive and thrive in youth ministry. And now your host, Jody Livingston.
Hey, welcome back for another episode of the Longer Haul Youth Ministry Podcast. If you are a new listener, welcome. Thanks for hanging out with us today and listening and being a part of the Longer Haul community. As always, thank you for what you do ministering to and with students and teens in youth ministry. Man, a hard job for sure. One that I am very grateful for. And that's kind of why we're here, to help equip you to not just survive this thing we call youth ministry, but really help you thrive in it as well. And so the blog there at thelongerhaul.com, lots of helpful, practical advice for you. And this podcast is just an extension of that. So if you've not checked out the blog yet, I invite you to do that. Go over there and see what all is there for you. Also, Youth Ministry Bundle Pack there you can download for free. You can catch me on Twitter at Jody Livingston. And, of course, we have the Longer Haul over there on Facebook as well. Today is a fantastic interview. We're going to be, you're going to hear from Kurt Libby, who is a youth pastor who has created a youth ministry app called the Youth Ministry Tracker app. And it is phenomenal. I have it. I use it and have used it for quite some time now since it came out. Really, it is beautifully designed, and the great thing about this app is whether you are a very, very large youth ministry or you're just kind of your average student ministry, you can be running 10 kids or you can be running 500 kids. This app is useful for you, and it will save you tons of time. It's so much more than just attendance tracking. It gives you great reports. It looks nice. It helps you follow up better, and it will save you a ton of time in your ministry. In particular, you're going to want to hang around to the very end. Kurt has been kind enough and generous enough to give away one license for the app. And so at the end of the episode, he kind of tells you there how to do that and how to win that. All the links, all the resources, all the things that we mention will be in the show notes. You can find those at thelongerhaul.com/episode 002, thelongerhaul.com/episode 002. With that said, we'll jump right into the interview here. Here is Kurt Libby with the Youth Ministry Tracker app. Awesome. Well, I am here with Kurt Libby. He is one of the founders and creators of a phenomenal youth ministry app called Youth Ministry Tracker. How are you, Kurt?
I'm doing great.
Kurt, tell me a little bit, just for those who may be listening and don't know you, kind of who you are, a little bit about yourself, how you kind of got into youth ministry, your journey there.
Okay, so I'm a 31-year-old youth pastor in Orville, California, also the director of a nonprofit youth center in our town that our church helps start. We've been around for about 8 years, called The Axiom. So I split time between directing a youth center and being a youth pastor at the church. And journey into youth ministry was I actually went to college to be a teacher in Reno, Nevada, and graduated from UNR, and then became a high school teacher for physics, geometry, and algebra. Did that for 3 years. In the third year, there was a shooting in our school, and was evacuated by the SWAT team. Nobody died, so it kind of hit the front page of a bunch of news things. And then when nobody died, it just kind of went away. But it didn't go away for us. And there was a lot of conversations about how to help the kids to try to make sure that didn't happen again. And so teachers wanted to do things like adding a homeroom or a senior project or culture days or different things. And because I knew Jesus, I needed to bring that into the conversation, but really wasn't allowed to because it was a public school setting. And I was like, these kids don't need a homeroom. They need Jesus. They need to learn how to forgive and the power of that. And so that led me in that year to end up resigning and taking a position at the church that I was at, actually. So it was kind of I went to college to learned a lot of math. I know a lot of calculus, but I don't use it at all. So that's
that
kind of
works
how I ended up here. Yeah.
Tutoring and, man, I can't help my third grader with her math. I don't know. It's not good. Math comes up and I just call my wife and she takes care of it. Yeah. So how long ago was that?
That was in 2008. So I've been in here for 6 years now.
That's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so you, along the way, were like, man, we should come up with this app. And that just came to you in a vision one night. And
yeah, no, not exactly a vision. So when we started the youth center, I was still teaching at the time. And so we had some software there because we had 2,000 teens in the first year come in through the youth center. And it's like, well, we got to track this somehow. And the app it was on a computer and it just wasn't working well. We ended up ditching that and then went to spreadsheets and we were doing stuff by hand and we had no money because we're a nonprofit and it was the economic downturn. So it was just like trying to make stuff work. And so I had the idea to make an app. Actually, one of my students that graduated out of my ministry was away at college doing computer science and he needed to do a senior project. And I had kind of been thinking about the app and was like, hey, let's do this for real. And so instead of him doing it as a senior project, he actually did his junior year. And because I was like, if we're going to launch this, we got to launch it at the beginning of school. And so we, January of 2014, January this last year, a year ago, we sat down, kind of drew it up, and then we met once a week, every week, because he's up in Idaho and I'm in California. And so we'd sit down once a week, and I was working on the graphic design and the building the website and doing marketing and contacting people, and he was plugging away at code. And so it took us about 8 months, but it was really out of a frustration of I don't want to put all this information into a spreadsheet and at the end all I have is like, 53 kids were there, but I don't know what kids, I don't know which kids didn't come. And really, like, I had this problem of like, I want to administer to the kids that are here when they're here, but I also have these kids that aren't here that I need to minister to, and I need to not worry about them until afterward. But afterward, I want it to be really obvious which kids weren't here, which kids should have been here. And so, to be able to do that follow up, and if it could do it automatically, which now the app does, I mean, that was a big thing for me, is I don't want to have to pull this information out of a database. I want to just put the information in and then it give me the exact stuff that I want right away. So
yeah, that's awesome. And so, like any good youth pastor, you use one of your students, and that kind of started that. And then, had you had any experience building apps prior to that, or is it?
I didn't. The student, his name's Reagan. So he's done it for the last 2 or 3 years. He had an internship this summer where he built Windows apps, Android apps, BlackBerry apps, and iOS apps, and working for another business-to-business company. And yeah, he got a lot of experience really fast, and he's also just really intelligent. So I did computer science when I was in college, but there was no iPhone then. So it was. So I know a lot of the logic. I know C++ and some stuff, but behind it, but it's old now. It's completely outdated. So I can help him, but he's the guy that's making everything happen in the background.
I got you. So talk a little bit about the app. I mean, obviously it tracks attendance. I've seen it. I have it. It's beautiful. Very clean, really user friendly. Easy to navigate. I think I really personally like being able to have the students kind of import that themselves.
Yeah. There's some people that don't get that. We'll get an email that says, hey, I just spent 4 hours putting in all my students. And I'm like, one of the points of this was to limit the amount of data entry for youth pastors, and which that's kind of hard that first week or two, getting all the kids in if you've got a large group. But now that there's iCloud Sync, I mean, we just had last night, we had 3 iPads going around, and kids could put in their information on all those, and it all syncs up to the same thing. So, so the student puts in their own information. The other thing that some people have wanted is being able to import, but there's a lot of power in the app that if you just imported, say, students from your contacts app or something, it's not going to give them, it's not going to load into the app what their school is, what their birth date is, their gender. And that stuff is really powerful in the groups. So when you get all that information, you can then create groups that are based off of attendance data or student data. So you can say, I want a group with all my junior high girls, or all of the kids that weren't at this event that go to this high school. And then you can send them all a text message or whatever. So that was the other thing too, was that I'm already paying for a text plan on my phone.
Right.
And so I don't want to pay for another one if the ministry is big enough, get a number that's separate so that you're not, I don't want 500 kids texting me, but if your ministry is the size of the average ministry, then you're probably the one that's texting the kids anyways. So
Right.
what this does is allows you to put in a little placeholder that says, hey, put their first name here. So, hey, first name, missed you last night. And then when it sends it to them, it's not a group message. It's just a message to them, but you don't have to copy and paste. You don't have to put that. It just does it all automatically. You just hit send a bunch of times and it'll send it to all the kids. So
that's nice.
That's actually been really, really, really helpful. You can create little managed groups too, like, my worship team, or my student leaders, or this is my small group, or Travis's small group, or whatever. And then you can just message those kids or whatever. So that's been really cool, and has increased my ability to just text kids and contact them, because it's so much faster.
Yeah.
So.
I think, for the average youth pastor, what it seems to do is it's kind of a one-stop hub for everything, right? So you're not having to run, I'm going to go here to my texting service if you have one and put this in here, or I'm going to go run and pull this. I need to, export this spreadsheet so I can get all the numbers and go through it and type this in, to text all these
Right.
kids, or to email all these kids, or I'm going to go over here and I'm going to do this, or try to, it's kind of one place for everything, easy to access, and to find everything you need in one spot. And I really appreciate that about it. Because, sometimes we have a tendency as youth pastors, there's a stereotype that's well earned and deserved of not being necessarily the most organized.
Right.
And so the simpler that we can make things in our ministries, the better. And, I think too, what happens on Sundays or at your midweek or whenever is really important, but it's not nearly as important as we think it is in terms of the rest of the week. And so being able to make those points of contact, whether it's a text message here and those go a long way with students.
Right.
So, well, that's awesome. So you've kind of thought through it a lot. Being a youth pastor probably helps a lot.
Yeah.
And so you're able to kind of cater that to the needs you see, not only even from a church standpoint, but even with your nonprofit, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's been interesting because the nonprofit, obviously, I don't know, maybe it's not obvious, but we run way more students through the nonprofit than we do through our youth ministry, just because it's just a teen drop-in center. We got Xboxes and pool tables and coffee shop. So anybody can come here. They come here 3 to 6 in the afternoon. And but being able to see those attendance trends for kids with those big numbers is really interesting and helpful for the staff here. So we have about 50 kids in our youth ministry. And so the trends kind of all look pretty similar, but for those larger ministries, being able to see the trend lines and whether more boys are coming or more girls are coming, and then being able to address the environment. And because we have a female manager here, and it's interesting the ebb and flow of what attracts males and female students, and so and being able to say, here's an inflection point. Here's where all the girls started dropping off. I wonder what happened there, and being able to kind of address the environment. So it's been really, really helpful.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's great. I'm making notes as we go here for my own personal benefit.
Yeah.
Great. So who did you say primarily the app is for? Youth pastors, larger church, smaller church, any church really?
Yeah, so it is. Well, it's definitely for youth pastors, or even volunteer youth leaders. I mean, you don't have to be on staff if you're the mom or dad that's helping out because there's nobody there. I think this app could really help you a lot. And but we built it for small churches first. We read a statistic that 90% of churches are 200 people or less in America.
Yeah.
And when we looked at the solutions that were out there for tracking student ministry, there just wasn't stuff that was hitting 90% of the churches. You
Right.
know, most of them have very small budgets, if any budget, and so that was kind of where we wanted to start. Was, hey, let's make something that will work for 90% of the people out there, and then scale it up to the place where hopefully larger ministries will be able to take advantage of it as well. And hopefully it empowers your ministry to grow so that then as the app grows, it'll kind of grow along with your ministry. So the other thing, the reason that we went with youth ministry specific wasn't just because I was a youth pastor. I mean, the attendance tracking apps that are out there are all classroom oriented mostly on the App Store. And we were like, well, we could make something that just tracks all stuff in ministry. You could do small groups, you could do children's ministry, you could do whatever. But we just decided to niche it down, and hey, this is going to be perfect for youth ministry. The way that you collect information from the kid feels very youth oriented. It's like, hey, what's your name? What do you want to be called? The next screen's like, oh, thanks, and it puts their name in there.
Yeah.
And it just looks very young, and it's got their school, and it's very obvious it's collecting information from a student. We've had a couple people say, hey, I want to use this for my children's ministry, and it's like, and that's going to be collecting information on family groups from parents. It's a different way to collect information. It's different.
Yeah.
So it's not just adding younger grades. And same thing with tracking small group stuff. It is like, I just want to make something that's so perfect for youth pastors, because I am a youth pastor, but I don't want you to have to try to make this thing work for what you're doing. I just want it to really hit for youth pastors. And then in the future, when we feel like this is done, maybe we'll kind of duplicate it for children's ministry or for small groups or whatever, but it'll be tailored to those people so that it's not trying to make this thing work for everyone. I mean, the reason that people make those generic apps is to climb the rank in the App Store. It's like, hey, this app will hit it. And it's like, that's not the goal. I don't really care if it hits number one in the App Store. I mean, it did when we first launched. It hit number one in productivity. And I
screenshot, right?
Oh, yeah. It was pretty crazy. I was like, we were above Evernote, and I was like dying.
Yeah.
So anyway, but obviously it went down because that was just the launch. But we didn't, that's not the goal. The goal isn't to climb the App Store rank and sit up there. It's just to make something that's really a perfect tool for that ministry. So,
yeah. Well, and I think too, that's such an important, that's just a void. So many youth ministry tools that are out there, be it books, just resources in general, they all typically cater to a larger ministry, mainly because they're written by folks who are serving at a larger ministry. And so it doesn't always scale down. I feel like things scale up much easier than they scale down. And a lot of times people aren't thinking about the scaling aspect when they're writing or creating things. And I can remember serving the very first church I served at in college. We had 10 kids if everybody came and brought a friend. It was a church of like 50 people total. Yeah. And I'm reading, I know nothing. I don't know anything about youth ministry. If it was fun, if I thought it sounded fun, we did it. I think we did like 6 lock-ins that first year I was there. I was 18. I had a student a year younger than me in my youth group. And we were making it up as we went. And I was reading everything I could. And we just tried it all. And most of it just wasn't feasibly possible with a youth group of, 5 to 10 kids. And so I love that. I think it's perfect for a smaller church or smaller ministry. But, I don't think it certainly limits itself to that. Even it seems to scale up very easily and nice, which is hard to do. That's really hard to do.
Yeah. It's, I mean, to target, those smaller youth groups without a budget, you can't really do that if you're interested in making a lot of money. Really, you want to, if you want to empower people that don't have resources, you got to start really at a really low level. And I think that there's so much value. It's like if you can empower, 70% of churches that are really small, you're actually going to have more of an impact than if you empowered, the 2% of churches that are really large, just because there's so many out there. And so we get emails all the time about people with small ministries, and they're able to care for their kids better than they were before. And it's like, man, that's like $1 million right there. It's just the best feeling to know that these guys are more empowered and they can do their job better. They can do the thing that God's called them to do. And not nobody, because I'm sure that there's a lot of people out there that are, but not a lot of people are looking out for those guys. So
yeah, for sure. That's one of the things on the blog at the Longer Haul that I'm always really mindful of is, the things the posts that are there, the things that we're writing, the things that I'm putting out there. I want to make sure they're practical. I want to make sure they're scalable, and things that will really help equip those guys to stay put, stay in the same place, and be effective down the road, and have some longevity. Be able to do what they do, enjoy what they do more, regardless of the size of the ministry, the budget, and those types of things. And I love and appreciate so much your heart in that, and that the app genuinely does that. It's not, there's a lot of things that claim to be something, and you get them and you're like, I don't know. And this is exactly what it claims to be, and I appreciate that so much about it.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're talking about Evernote. I remember Evernote came out with like Evernote Hello, and I thought, man, this is awesome, and because I use Evernote for everything, and I downloaded Hello, and it was and people kind of put their own stuff in, their own information in at that first round, and it was very much like this, and people were complaining, it's not really professional. It's not, people are like, man, this is exactly what I need. And so, I'm like, this is great. And then the first update that comes out, they completely change it. And it's much more professional. And so it's kind of like, well, there went that. I mean, that was good while it lasted. And so this seems to really do that and then some. And I love that. So how about, okay, there's lots of, I have ideas for apps and software all the time that would be helpful.
Yeah.
And, and I'm not going to tell you those because you'll make them. But, yeah. What is it that says, hey, I can do this? Or I need to be the one to do this?
Oh, man. That's a good question. It's a good question because I actually am not the guy to do this. I think that I was just frustrated long enough, and there was an opportunity in front of me with a brilliant developer with Reagan, and it was like, oh well, let's try it and see if it works. And I was kind of scared, put my name on it and put it out there, and then you're asking people for money because we had to start an app business, which we had minimum tax, and you're buying trademarks, and you're doing all this stuff, and it's like spending all this money and hoping that somebody will be interested enough to pay off your debt that you're accumulating. So there's that side of it. And then there's the nightmare side of just like we started in January, which is iOS 7, and then they're just coming out with iOS 8. And so like as we're building, they're changing what you can even use. And so you're building something on somebody else's platform. Which is really difficult. The reason we started with iOS is because it's very clean. We actually have iOS devices, but Android is so messy. There's so many devices. There's a new Android device every week. And they run different versions and it's so it's so fragmented. It's really hard to develop apps that have any sort of consistency between devices. And so, and so there's like all this behind the scenes stuff of, can I even make this thing work? It's really hard to go from like paper and Photoshop to like functionality. And so when you said that, like, hey, I got this idea, and I'm not going to tell you because you might make it. Trust me, I feel like I hear that once a week, and I'm like, you have no idea how much I'm not going to make your idea. Like, it's so much work. It took us 8 months to get the first version out, and that was with him working probably 10 to 20 hours a week on development. And so we're just a team of 2. We're small, but it's so much work. And that was a minimally viable product. It was like, right. You can collect information, you can make a group, you can take attendance, and you can see some stats. And none of it is really as clean or as good as we want it to be, but it can do the things that we said it would do. And that's about it. And so, it's a really long process. When you're getting into it, it is, it's a gigantic undertaking. It's your side project that ends up, you got to tell your wife, hey, I got to go do a conference call tonight again at 11 p.m. You know, it's that type of stuff. And, but for this specifically, it has limited or it's reduced the amount of time that I've spent in ministry on trying to figure out where these kids are. And so like, I've already like recovered the time I feel like in ministry in the fall semester. So, but yeah, it is, there's app studios out there that'll make stuff for you. It just costs a lot of money. So like, yeah. There's a triangle, maybe we can draw this up and throw on the show notes, but there's a triangle that I saw where it says choose 2. And so you put one thing on each point of the triangle, and it's like, quality, speed, and cost. And so you can choose the quality and the speed, but that's going to make it expensive. You know, if it needs to be fast and good, it's going to be expensive. If it's going to be fast, but it can be bad, it can be cheap. And so you can only choose 2. You know, if you don't have a lot of money, but you do have a lot of time, then you can make a quality product. But if you don't have a lot of money and you need it to be fast, it's not going to be high quality. So it's just, you know, when making this stuff, I think it's just like any project. It's just a gigantic project that, you know, we had to set aside a lot of time but it's totally worth it. So, I don't know. You got to tackle it, but it's not for the light heart. I wouldn't say, I've started a lot of things. I've started blogs. I've written a book. I've done lots of different things over the years, but it's like, this has been the most all-encompassing, like, you'll just hit a roadblock where it's like, I don't know how to make this do this. And then you can't figure it out for like 3 weeks. And it's like, dude, 21 days is a long time to bang your head against the wall. So, that's the type of stuff. And it's, and a lot of it is just that I'm not smart enough. And so you're doing a ton of research and learning as you go. And I think that's all computer science. It just is moving so fast that, like we built a bunch of stuff for iCloud Sync, and then iOS 8 literally changed everything on the way iCloud works with iCloud Drive. Yeah. And it was like, we had to just completely scratch it all. And it's like, oh my, yeah, it's just so fast. And so, so anyway, if you have ideas, get a partner, that is a really good developer. And make sure that you got a lot of time, to allow for it to kind of develop.
I'll just tell you my idea when we're done. And then
all right. Okay.
Yeah, I can see it. I mean, things change so quickly. So right now the app is iOS only?
Oh, yeah.
And probably for the forever seeable future.
Yeah, it's, I mean, there's, the other thing too is that we didn't want to have a web backend, where you have to be linked up to the web to see your database or whatever. Is it okay if I get really honest on this?
Yeah, absolutely.
The reason I didn't want that, and I want it to be on your device or in your iCloud account, is because I am scared to death of hackers.
Yeah.
Like, Chase Bank can't keep their their server secure or Target or whatever, it's like the last thing I'm going to do is create an online database of personally identifiable information of teenagers all over the world.
Yeah.
Like their address, their phone number, their picture. And like, I'm like, this is horrible to say, but that's a pedophile's dream.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I will not create that database because if Chase can't guard theirs, I can't guard it. And so that's why we didn't make a web backend. If we made a web backend, we could make an Android app, we could make a Windows Phone app, we could make all that stuff really easily and just plug into that. But it scares me to death. And so that was why it was like, no, I'm going to put it on your device. It's locked down. It's in your iCloud account. As long as your iCloud password is secure, nobody's going to get this thing. And so, and if they did, if somebody hacked into your phone, I don't know, it's just yours. It's
right.
not 10,000 youth ministries worth of information.
Right.
Like that was so scary to me in building this. I want to keep kids safe and kids' families safe. So anyway,
for the record, that's not my idea.
Okay.
My idea has nothing to do with that. So.
Okay, good.
So, it's a phenomenal app, man. I really do appreciate all the time and effort that you went into it. I know it's helping youth pastors who are using it and youth ministries. There's no doubt in my mind. It's well thought out. It's very clean. It's a very stable app as well. And so, man, I appreciate it. If for those listening, if you have not seen this app or used this app, I would highly recommend it to you. You can find it in the App Store there for your iOS device, and it is easy to use, very user friendly. There is a little bit, I think, with most things, just a little bit of a learning curve as far as where things are.
Yeah.
And it does take some time off the front to get it set up, to go in and put the schools in, and your events and those types of things, just off the front. But once that's there, maybe that first night where you start taking attendance with it, or that first day, and if you've got students signing into that could take a while depending on the size of your ministry. But beyond the first little bump there, you're right. I mean, I think it will save you so much time and help you, again, just a one-stop hub for everything you need as far as tracking and contacting your students. Man, I can't recommend it enough. It really is a really well-designed app for youth workers, youth pastors, by a youth pastor. And man, if nothing else, coffee money for Kurt.
Yeah.
And who doesn't appreciate that, right?
Right. That's right.
So the app's in the App Store. How much is the app?
The app's $15.
Okay.
And people ask this, people email us all the time. So is that $15 a month? It's like, no, that's like a normal app. It's $15. And as long as you're buying it on the same App Store account, if you got an iPad, an iPhone, iPod Touch, whatever, you just pay the price once and you get it on all your devices. So
it's awesome. Well worth the $15, man. Well worth the $15. It's cheaper than a software solution, for sure.
Yeah. It's about the price of a CD. So.
Yeah, or a subscription service.
Yeah.
For sure. Any resource other than your app that you'd recommend and throw out to folks to check out, a book or anything? Could be anything, really.
Yeah, I'm pretty much a nerd, so I was going to bring an app here. It's called Slack. I don't know if you've heard of that. Slack.com. They've got apps for Android and iOS and everything on the computers, but it has, especially with the youth center that we run, it's kind of like an old IRC type thing if you're into that. But basically, it's a communication thing for your team, and you create conversations around. So you create these little, kind of like a little chat room. So we'll have something like, we just did a light parade. So we're doing a float for the light parade. So we put that up, and then everybody can talk in that little room, and everything's searchable. It hooks up to Evernote and Google Docs and Trello and all kinds of stuff. It's free to use up to a certain amount of users. We don't pay for it. We've got, 5 or 6 people on it right now. So, but what it has done is it has taken our team communication out of email. And so it's all in there. And so when I sit down to work on stuff for the Axiom, I don't bring up my email. I bring up this app, and I don't see all that other stuff. I mean,
Right.
and there's no distractions. There's no, hey, Invisible Children's having a sale on their stuff. It's like, there's no, like, I don't need to go buy this thing right now, because that's what happens when I open my email or open Facebook or whatever. The communication is all just in this one app. I get notifications. You can have private conversations, all that stuff. And it has totally increased our productivity. And then the other thing too is, instead of it being an email, is like next year when we get a light parade, we got an intern right now, and he was kind of helping with that float. So when we have an intern next fall, he can actually go back and see that whole conversation about what we did last year, about all the stuff that happened, and we don't have to pull old emails or anything. All that stuff is there. You could bring a new volunteer up to speed. They could see the whole conversation that's happened. So once they get in there, they can kind of just see the whole thing instead of it being stuck in somebody's email somewhere. So
yeah, that's great. That's great. We've looked at that. We've used Trello some. We've played around with that a little bit. Similar thing, not quite as extensive. Baby steps here, man. Baby steps.
Yeah, the conversations in Slack, that's really what you want to. It's just for having conversations. That's really the power in it. Trello's really good for to-dos and for sorting your to-do stuff. But you can actually, it can pull the information from Trello into Slack. Which is,
wow, that's awesome.
And then if you upload a Google Doc to it, you can connect all that stuff, and everything's searchable. So if you remember like one thing, like, oh, we did that fundraiser, you can just type in fundraiser, and it'll bring up everything in every channel that says fundraiser, and you can, and even inside the Google Docs. So it's really awesome. Really powerful. Yeah.
Cool. We'll put a link to that in the show notes, and Trello as well. That's pretty awesome. And if folks want to find you, where would they find you?
Oh, yeah. You can connect on youthministrytracker.com. My email there is kurt@youthministrytracker.com. And follow us on Twitter @YMTracker. And then my personal Twitter would be Mr. Lib. And you got to spell it all out, MISTERLIB. So I'm on Twitter a lot, and I really enjoy that. So that would be a good way to connect.
Awesome. And Kurt has offered to give away a one app here, one version of the app.
One free license.
So to do that, how about we do this? If you will comment on the show notes here in this episode down below, or if you have questions for Kurt, do you mind bouncing on and checking those out? And answer questions as we go. And then from those comments, we will. I'll let Kurt pick. How about that? Because I don't like to disappoint people.
Share something about, if you'd like it. Share something about your youth ministry, and then or the other thing that might be really cool too is if you know somebody else, maybe somebody else in your town or whatever, that maybe they don't have a budget and you want to get it for them, that'd be really cool too. Just share a little story of why we should give it to you, and we'll hook you up.
Yeah, that's awesome. And either way, check out the app, man. It is phenomenal. It's worth the $15. It will save you so much time, and again, I think more than anything, just help you be more productive and effective in loving on and leading and teaching your students as well. So check it out for sure. Kurt, thanks you so much, man.
Jody, thanks for everything you're doing.
Yes, sir, and we'll catch you later.
All right.
Thanks, Kurt. Well, there you go. A great app created by a great youth pastor. I really hope you'll check it out. Like I said, we've been using it. It is really, really helpful, and for $15. Really one time, that's really reasonable and inexpensive. And again, I hope you'll check it out at the end of the episode there. Kurt mentioned how to get a free copy, a free download, free license of it. So hopefully you will run back to the show notes there at thelongerhaul.com/episode 002 and leave a comment. Kurt will be checking there and be responding back to those, and then whoever wins, we'll make sure that we get that to you on there. Also, you will find again all the links, the resources that we have mentioned there in the episode in the show notes. So we mentioned a couple there with Trello and Slack. Slack, by the way, we have started using as a youth ministry team and actually as a staff at church since this interview, and it has been really, really, really helpful. So for sure, that one to check out also as well. And if you're enjoying the podcast, man, I would love to ask you to go to iTunes, leave a review there, and subscribe. Share it with somebody else you know. Helps us just reach more youth pastors, be able to help and equip other youth pastors. Continue to follow on thelongerhaul.com. Thank you again so much for all that you do for the students and families that you serve. Until next time, give them Jesus, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks for listening to the Longer Haul Youth Ministry Podcast at www.thelongerhaul.com.